And yet, we actually begin to realize that one of the challenges that women in East Asia face is this intense focus on child rearing and teaching children, where sort of a responsibility have a lot of learning that can occur across nationally, which would be really a worthwhile thing for sort of meetings like this, where we can do so. Thank you.
In our final closing, another theme that I hear that I'd love just maybe each of you to touch on is the relationship of trust, hope, and risk between governments, institutions, and citizens. Parfait, from your presentation, you showed us that there's a delicate balance that must come together in order for an individual to maximize their potential. Professor Desai, you've explored that intricate paradox of strengthening the economy, growing population, but minimal workforce development. I'd love for both of you to talk about the perspective of trust and how can we repair that trust when currently it is broken within our society.
That's a very fundamental question. I think trust in general has now been recognized as a key ingredient for governance more broadly, and it's actually defined as a form of capital, which we call social capital. But trust is even more important for achieving SDGs and harnessing a dividend. And there are different, at least in my view, four different four lines that we need to address. The first is the conversation or trust between I'd say generation, between the present and the future. We have to be accountable for future generation and what we leave them in terms of the world we leave them. And so that's one line of trust and accountability that we need to consider. A second line is precisely what Dr. Desai talked about, which is the conversation between men and women, a conversation across gender line, which is also critical to the harnessing of dividend and to governance. But there are two other lines that I'd like to expand on a little bit. One is the trust and conversation across class lines. One theme that I talked about is the growing inequality and just massive differences between the haves and the have-nots. Unfortunately, a lot of the top 10, most of the top 10 countries in the world in terms of inequality are in Latin America and in Africa. And the gaps are just enormous. And unless you can repair this trust, it's very difficult to have a society. And increasingly, we have to realize that it's not just the poor who pay the price for this inequality. Society in general pays the price in terms of reduced growth, but also in terms of just sheer security. And so we need to build that trust between classes if we want to move ahead. And the final trust fault line that I like to address is between ages, between those who govern and those who are governed. In Europe, the gap in age between the governed and those who govern is about 12 years on average. In Africa, that gap is 45 years between the median age of those in governing and the youth population. So it's a big gulf there that we need to somehow bridge. And it's a difficult gap to bridge because there are differences just in terms of the world in which today's generation is being raised, but it's a gap that we need to address urgently. And so in addition to all of the conversation that we need to have across classes, there has to be a really deliberate effort to understand this new generation, its aspiration, but also what it can do, and to make certain that we give that generation the tools to lift the world.
Thank you.
Those are great comments, Parfait. And I think I would add to a few other dimensions of trust in here. I think that trust between the citizens and the government goes both ways. The government has to trust the citizens that they will make good choices rather than mandating those choices. Okay? Do we really need to define, how many children individuals should have, or should we think about, create the right circumstances in which individuals will choose what is right for them? Okay? So that's one aspect of the trust. The other aspect of the trust is that for the citizens, when they are using government services, to have a trust that the services would be available and that services would be of reasonable quality. We can always say that we want to encourage more hospital deliveries. But if the pregnant woman, when she gets to a hospital, there is no doctor available, or the hospital is so overcrowded that she has to lie on floor, okay, that breaks the trust. Okay. I would also say, though, one other area of trust that's very important, which is between the development sector and the development funders. Governments, funding agencies, and a variety of other sources from which funding is given, and the development actors. You know, the idea that you can do a project in 3 years, show a results, okay, and then you are out, okay, doesn't really function well. You know, if we are going to set up programs, we have to have a longer term horizon. We have to have a trust that these programs will function. You know, my older sister got trained out of this particular program, and yes, I can also expect to get the training. Okay? That means that the program is not going to end in just 3 years. Okay? So I think this whole idea of trust, commitments, and investing for a long term is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you all for sharing your insights. I'd like you to step down, and then we'll invite you back for panel 2.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'm panel. We just, got to hear from some great panelists really talking about the theories and their perspectives on the demographic dividend. Now I'm excited to talk about putting this into practice, specifically in terms of policies and programs that all of you are actually putting. We're in opposite order, but going from right to left over here, Mr. Mohammed Manan, the Prime Minister of Planning from Bangladesh. We have Dr. Gina, Professor of Economic Planning and Development from the Kingdom of Eswatini, and Ambassador Gorgi Panatov, the Bulgarian Ambassador to the United Nations, and Dr. Haruko Hayashi, the Director of Research and International Cooperation for the National Institute of Population and Social Security Research from Japan. So to start out with, I'd love to hear from each of you your perspectives, and if you can tell us a little bit about what's happening in your different countries. Mr. Mohammed, we'll like to start with you. Yes.
The difference is I am not a demographer or a scientist or a professor. I'm a political man. Having said that, I must also point out one thing. The gentleman who gave the presentation a few minutes earlier on this, leverage and mess, this sort of things, it was very elegant For non-cognoscenti like us, it made things clear. But I have some questions to him. Can I ask those questions now?
You may.
The pie chart showed economics twice rather than once. I would like to know why was that emphasis given political insecurity. It is fraught with a lot of these sort of things, sir, to you. So these two things I need to, maybe I'll go over to him and learn from him. Okay, it is there it is good to know how it is shaping up, what the implications are, so that with their assistance, the policies can be framed which will increase value, which will strengthen the winds of change which the demographic dividend brings. Coming to my country, Bangladesh, it's obvious the last few decades there have been tremendous change. And many people, apart from other factors which have played its part, ascribe to this demographic dividend being one of the drivers of the new growth change that is happening in Bangladesh. Now, once you know that the demographic dividend is there, it's not the only thing, but it's a major thing. Now, to strengthen this, we have been told by pundits that we need to raise the level of skill of the population. We have to raise the level of education. We have to raise the system of social security that exists in a country like ours, which is low income, so that the synergy that results from all this planning, all these policy changes will add more wind to this. Yes, it's clear that we are reaping benefits now, because it is for the first time in the last so many years there has been change in our society in terms of economic development. We are consistently scoring above 7-8% literacy, building infrastructure. In every aspect of this game of change, there has been sea change. And definitely demographic dividend has played a part. So he gave the example of Korea from 70 to 2000, 1/3 to 1/4 may be ascribed directly to demographic dividend. I wish similar because our population is different from the Korean population. The level of education, skill, existing at that moment is quite different. So we would like to know more from UNFPA and other technical organizations who work in this field, where we stand in terms of human resource development, so that our demographic dividend can yield more benefits, become more productive, to be using that term. So at this stage I would like to say that yes, this is going on. Yes, you have told us, and our pundits and our scholars have also told us that this is happening. So this is the time to put our acts together, reap benefits from you, from UNFPA and other friends from all over the world, our development partners, and make things happen faster than it is happening now. I think I should stop at this stage. Thank you.
Country, lower middle income, but this middle income thing is misleading. It has all the characteristics you normally see in the least developed countries. In terms of our population structure, by 76, for instance, we had almost 60% of dependency. We are characterized the major to work or active enough. And the population of people who are going to work now is increasing. However, still in the Kinsik that we need to work on. I'll give an example, not an example, it's 47%. An adult, somebody turning 18, joining the labor force in the Kingdom of Swahili, activity of 47% compared to an adult. We're formulating, we can't say we're beginning to see things, but evidence is there that the population just above age 15, we're beginning to have that part of the demographic growing. So we will be having more people of a working age joining the labor force. And for these people to be productive, to lead to what is called demographic dividends, there are a number of things that must be done. The professor indicated them, of course. One of those is the health. In order for the people to be healthy and be productive, they must be healthy. And we are addressing the issue from early childhood to much later, all aspects of health services. And the health sector is receiving the second highest following education. I won't have time to enumerate all those things, but health is being addressed, strengthen institutions that will help protect people. In terms of economic reforms and job creation, we also have youth funds that are being introduced. All the things that you see that the professor gave are necessary, but not sufficient. A sufficient thing is to empower the people so they can do things themselves. Then you'll be moving towards realizing the demographic dividend. I thank you.
Ambassador Panetta.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. As His Excellency the Minister from Bangladesh said, he was not an expert, he's a politician. I'm neither an expert nor a politician. I'm an ambassador, and sometimes the ambassadors should be competent on everything. But allow me to share with you some observations I have regarding the situation in Bulgaria. First, let me start by saying that we are facing very dynamic times today. We are facing, I would say, tectonic shifts in traditional perceptions, in value systems, and shifts in life expectations. And unavoidably and unsurprisingly, those shifts have an immediate effect on the reproductive and migratory attitudes of people. So this happens in Bulgaria. Bulgaria is a country in Eastern Europe, and in Eastern Europe, the whole region is marked by low fertility, population aging, and complex migration movements. The demographic situation in Bulgaria marks a serious risk, but I will go farther. According to official UN data, we are experiencing, excuse me, the worst situation in the world. The population of Bulgaria is the fastest shrinking population globally. Why? During the most difficult times of the economic transition in the 90s, more than 1 million people left our country because of the economic and financial crisis. Emigration, low birth rates, and high death rate are all contributing factors for the declining population. Actually, our growth rate is negative, minus 0.67. At the same time, I would like to stress that, at the same time, Bulgaria has a high Human Development Index. My country ranks 51st in the world. And my country, Bulgaria, holds the 38th position in Newsweek's ranking of the world's best countries to live in. That rankings measure health, education, political environment, and economic dynamism. At the same time, Bulgarian HIV rate is also among the lowest in the world. Nevertheless, we are the fastest shrinking nation globally. So, of course, that dynamic poses a challenge for the economy, for the pension funds and the insurance companies. But we're convinced that raising the retirement age and investing in health, especially reproductive health, education, youth policies, sports for all, and promotion of healthy lifestyle are the way to go. As a society, we should take measures to empower women in government and business, reduce the conflict between the professional career and child care of women, and achieve gender equality and invest in reproductive health and services. I can share with you experience of my own. I am civil servant. I work at the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I participated in a group at the ministry to consider a promotion of our colleagues. So the promotion is linked to the professional experience, to the length of the professional experience. And they started a debate at the Bulgarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs whether the years where the mom takes care of her child are counted as a professional experience or not. And I found myself fighting my colleagues, convincing them that this is professional experience. So, yeah, we won that one. We won that one. But why? Studies show that societies with efficient gender equality and empowerment of women are the most prosperous and sustainable. What measures are we taking? This year, 2 important decisions were taken by the Bulgarian government: to double the expenditure for education, including teachers' salaries, and to cover in full the expenditure for all requests for in vitro insemination and for all related reproductive health services. I would like, thank you. I'd like to stress that we are focused already on the United Nations Population Fund, and particularly with the regional office in Istanbul, in the elaboration of our demographic strategy and policies towards young people. Here in the hall, by the way, we have a representative of the Institute, International Institute for Youth Development, Petri Sofia. That is an institution created with the help of UNFPA in Bulgaria. That is a knowledge hub and regional resource center that supports youth empowerment in the areas of sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality and peace building in the region of Eastern Europe and Central Asia and beyond. So we created together with UNFPA and with the regional center in Istanbul, we created a regional hub dedicated to those purposes. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now it's my turn. I'm so surprised to see so many people here, and then many of the people might be interested with this demographic dividend. And I'm from Japan, where it is very aged, most aged in the world. Actually, the proportion of aged people more than 65 years old, it is 28%. And then also, every year, our population is declining. Maybe the speed in Bulgaria, it is quicker, but the number of people declining, it's like 400,000 people are declining every year, so it is a lot. However, today, I'm supposed to talk about our demographic dividend, so I'm going to talk about a bit of history. Because Professor Parfait, you have shown South Korea, and then also the Asian dragons, they were having this demographic dividend in the 1980s and 1990s. That is the time when this word demographic dividend has been created. Shumani, then there is a big portion of working age population that will be creating a good condition for the economic development. We had that good time. That was about 1960s. And then during the 1960s, we had this demographic dividend, but even we didn't have this term. We didn't know that it is demographic dividend. But we know that there are less and less children, and still the aging issue has not become a serious issue. And then we know that there is a lot of working age population. So what did we do? So first, we have achieved the universal health coverage in 1961. Why we could do it? Because people who need a lot of health care, then there is a young working age people who is not having too many diseases. So people pay for the health insurance, and then you can have a good coverage of healthcare for everybody during the time. And then that was one of the reasons why we could have this universal health coverage during this 1961, during the demographic dividend time. The second thing is the pension. The same reason, there are many working age populations, so they just pay out of salary the pension premium. And then you pay to the public pension fund, and pension fund have a lot of money, so this collected money is redistributed, financed to make the sewages, to make the roads, and to make the bridges, and then that has contributed for the development of Japan. And then the last thing is that employment, because there is a lot of people who need employment, but during the time, the unemployment of Japan was the lowest in the history. It is about less than 1%. And then why? Because there are many things, there are many policies on labor, and also there is, for example, there is the disparity between urban area and rural area. In rural area, there is a lot of young people who are not having enough job, and then in urban area, then there is a lot of demand for the laborers, for the people who wants to work. So at the time, the government started to do this long-distance job relocation, job placement policy, and then there is a lot of trains packed with young students aged 15 years old, and then bringing these people from northern part of Japan to Tokyo, and then this is one of the policies we had for during this demographic dividend. So this is the hat. Yes.
Thank you so much. So one of the questions I have is actually for Minister Gina, as well as for Mr. Manan. I'd love to understand specifically any interventions that you have in Eswatini around technology, and how specifically that's empowering the youth and potentially kind of increasing equality there. And then, Mr. Manan, if you could share any perspectives or any planned interventions or innovations that you may have in Bangladesh as well.
What was the question? I didn't pick up well. What was the question about? What did you say? I didn't hear about
Specifically, any planned innovations in the area of technology or gender equality, and then Mr. Gina, if you can also share around technology investment.
First, I can combine, at the beginning of the answer, a short one, I'll combine the technology and empowerment of women. The youngest minister is a woman and is a minister for ICT. That's where I start. And also, we have the Minister for Justice, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Education, Health, I forget another one, it's women. We have been we're traditional, a very traditional society, but we're moving faster than most in empowering women. We're becoming very conscious of the fact that transitioning from about a lot, we're putting every effort to address those issues.
meaning technology as such. Yes, of course, we are at a level which is, say, in 1970, where Korea was. Probably, I think we are not there at this stage even. But the question for us, I think, is that empowerment of women is very important in our case. Half the population, and being a traditional society where women were not equal participants in everything. So for the dividend, simple arithmetic, if half the workforce don't stay in work or stay behind, you have half the output. So for us, the decision to unleash or unbound or open fields for women as such is very important. Even at the level of technology that we have, because we can't change technology overnight, it takes time. But if we can have policy which empower women, bring them out and they contribute, probably we'll have better benefits than otherwise. So it's very simple. For us, women empowerment. For us, other socially binding factors.
In moving towards society and age structure, like both of your countries, maybe somewhat a controversial question is, in looking back, is there anything you would have done differently? If not, I'm also curious if there's anything that you've heard from your fellow panelists as learnings today, or anything that might change your perspective.
I talk first. So what I have said earlier was the good part. But in terms of gender, for example, during the 1960s, we have this traditional value of family. And then the husband go out and work, and then the wife stay at home. So this kind of traditional family model was gradually changing, but we were not changing our policies. For example, until 1985, if the woman goes to work in the company, then she never have a higher job. She just serving the tea, and then when you become 25 years old, it's a good age to get married, and then you retire, and then you get married. This kind of model was up to 1985, and then after that, gradually it was changing. And then because of this, because our policy was a bit not very gender-friendly, maybe because it was a long time ago, but that is the reason why our fertility kept on declining, and then until it hit very low, and we have to wait until 1990 or later when we started to think about we have to do something. We have to do something for the couple. We have to arrange the environment so that the young people can get married, and also if they want, they can have children. So we have long time not thinking too much about gender, which caused our low fertility right now. But again, right now, we are having this demographic, we are having population decline, and people have to work. So somehow we are trying to use this demographic decline, population decline, to empower our women and empower our elderly. So this can be also a different kind of demographic dividend, maybe third demographic dividend or whatever. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. As I mentioned in my intervention, we think that first raising the retirement age is measure number one. But together with that, first we make sure that our aging population receives additional training. They learn lifelong. And actually, probably the most important measure is that my government decided to invest in high-end technologies, high-end health care technologies, including prevention, in order to work as long as we can. So your second question was about what would I have done differently. Well, you know, I'm absolutely convinced that the well-being and the prosperity of the population in each and every country, not only in Bulgaria, depends on the quality of education, on the quality of healthcare, of the quality of the social security, and let's say of the overall security. I've been around. I worked and I visited many countries in the world. And I think that these are the main factors we have to focus in order to find a solution for our problems today. So my answer is I would have focused more on education, I would have focused more on healthcare and on social security.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to say much that is useful, but I didn't address the technology. As you are aware, technology is one thing that does not ask for permission. You just wake up and find what you have is awareness of that, of the Internet of Things type of world we live in. We are still working on the technology that exists now, at least that in terms of communication, the last mile, everyone will have access to the Wi-Fi in the country. And we are very close to it. Thank you.
That's amazing. Okay, well, thank you to all of our panelists. I'd also like to now bring up our previous panelists onto the stage. So we'll get started as everyone's coming up. To close out, we'd actually like to hear from all of our session participants about your recommendations and commitments towards the completion of the program of action. So to start out with, we'll start with this side of the room and then we can go over there. Please, Minister Manan, you can start. Oh, no.
Questions?
This is just your closing
Okay,
statements
the
around
last question
commitments and.
which was coming to me but stopped there. You see, technology is, of course, important, but there is an appropriate level at every level of the economy. Our economy is at a level which has an appropriate level of technology. You can't impose higher technology here, you lose the strength. So number one, there's appropriateness. Number two, you can't compare Japan with us. Japan has higher ratio of aging population than we have. We still don't have the critical level, which is very large, which is unsupportable. It's increasing in number. So at this stage, it is within our grasp. Our dependency ratio is lower than theirs. So we have a window of opportunity here larger than they have. So these are the factors that we have to keep it in hand and try to use the time that is available to us as quickly or as well as we can by use of various policies, by use of various supportive measures.
It's fair to say over the next 20 years, there'll be more changes technologically than the last 100 years. Some of the jobs we have today will no longer exist. So as we think about the youth and preparing them for future, we have to factor that in, that the world will not look like it looks today in the very, very near future.
Well, it's 25 years past Cairo, and I think I agree actually with Natalia Kanem that we don't have more 25 years. What should be done? Everything within our capabilities and capacities in order to achieve the goals. But what Bulgaria, this is the first based violence. In the beginning of this year, my government passed equalizing sexual violence in families. So this is a large leap forward, I think. And the third thing I mentioned, we decided to invest in high-end healthcare technologies because our population is aging.
So, since the morning, we hear that maybe a bit different from 25 years ago is that we are now in a world where there is a lot of diversity. The challenges which now African countries are now having is completely opposite to what we are having as a challenge. However, I suppose that I have been living in Africa for many years, but I suppose that our challenge is as difficult as the African challenges. And then this diversity is something which is now characterizing our world. So what we have to think about is in every country there is the challenges, and then in every country there are old people, young people, and then there are men and women, and so we have to think about.
Nalde, I'd like to.
With Preparidi for the organization I was working back here seems like a great full circle to me. It also seems to me like we have a very different mood today here than it was 25 years ago. At that time, we sort of had hopes, but not a confidence that some of these hopes can think that our aspirations have grown significantly higher, our impatience has grown significantly higher, and we kind of have this sense that, yes, it can be achieved, but let's do it quickly. Okay? It also poses a sort of a challenge, okay? Because at one point in time, governments were afraid to make large commitments. Okay? Today, governments are willing to make very vast commitments without always being sort of prepared about how to implement that. And I think that somewhere along the line, we are going to have to balance the commitments that we make as a government, as societies, and what can be achieved within the time period in which it can be achieved. It's a good problem to have, okay? But it is a problem.
Support the Nairobi statement of ICPD 25. That means accelerating the promise, as you know, and its global commitments. When coming here, we prepared different instruments we would like to commit, and hopefully they are as clear and as working as you just. We will maternal health until 2023 projects. Some of them I just mentioned on the panel. In this connection with countries like Niger and Malawi and Cameroon, by increased core funding of 12 million euros to the International Planned Parenthood Federation. There are core contribution of UNFPA of 33 millions and contributing to the work of the Global Financing Facility with 50 millions. These are all numbers, and hopefully they pan, because this afternoon we have been sitting together and of countries with population development. Elder ones, as Germany is without doubt, and younger ones, Bangladesh, India, and the African countries. And in this spirit of learning of each other, we would like to continue this together from Africa and other regions of the world. And we would like to, or we would offer to start an initiative at the next UN Commission on Population and Development in New York 2020 to bring all these people together and have a dialogue, learn from each other, and find a way to handle this problem for the youth. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think we could have saved ourselves one person, because what I'm going to say from, and I think I have three specific recommendations. One is, I think the extent to which we are going to be able to move to a further part of the ICPD to commitments to the national planning agenda of populations. It's not, if you think about any development integrator, and different populations that we've been talking, energy of this has to do synergies, individual goals, multiple goals, and achieve them. Empower people as a means to reduce quality, protect, important to be looking for. The third recommendation, and it's kind of a self-serving, is if we really want to be efficient, this is also a time to think about the investment that we make into science and policy. We cannot, without very solid evidence, very solid evaluation, monitoring, conversation, and interface between the world, the global community, foster a close and respectful dialogue between scientists and policymakers. And I hope the ambassador of Bulgaria is going to be, as an overall expert, is going to be part of this kind of platforms. Thank you.
To achieve sustainable, vibrant, and inclusive societies, we must assure that every individual is afforded the rights and equipped with the tools to harness their potential through skill, craft, and opportunity. We know that sustainability, but in our globe, but with global partnership, supply and demand for skilled labor, we can of women and youth. Everyone benefits from a globally cross-learning and communication. Very concrete discussion today. Thank you.
one's for Fela. This one's for Fela. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Shut up, boy. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Up, boy. Shake it. Wake it. Break it. Make it. Take it. Catch it. Kick it. Drop it. Hey, like I this. Like I shake it. Wake it. See you later. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Yo, give it. Shut up, boy. Yo, give it. If you call a woman African woman, no go be. She go say, if you call a woman African woman, no go be. She go say, shake, sa. I want to tell you about ladies.
All this needs to go.
Zinakuanga
Weka huko kwa viti. Help. There's tools, eh? Ati? Meza. Zitolewe kila kitu.
Then they also carry cups and plates back.
Kule kwa meza.
Got you beat.
No, no.
Got you beat.
We are the stars, the bright and morning stars, with the power to be seen across the world. We're not the future, we're the present. Invest in us and you will see the world is changing.
Because our bodies and the future we hold. We want for you to see that everybody can win. Could it be education or contraception? Everyone will always be here to see.
We are family and we are planning to go around the world telling everyone that we demand a voice. We are family and we are planning to go around the world telling everyone that we demand a choice. We on the ground in every area. We're the ones to make a world a better place. We want the best. We want the we demand a choice. No, no.
Got you beat.
We are the stars, the bright and morning stars, with the power to be seen across the world. We're not the future, we're the present. Invest in us and you will see the world is changing.
Because our bodies and the future we hold. We want for you to see that everybody can win. Could it be education or contraception?
Check one.
If you can all please take your seats, we'll get started. Please be seated. Thank you for taking your seats. Thank you for joining us today. It's my honor to introduce to you the Vice Minister of Health from Thailand, Sambrang Yanggroto. Sir.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome and welcome, all of you here today. In spite of all the critical situation in many developing countries, sexual and reproductive health rights and services are still being challenged by a few influential leaders. We must collectively voice loudly and act seriously to ensure universal access to reproductive health rights and contraceptive choice, as exemplified by our great success to insert the right to sexual and reproductive health into the UN Political Declaration on Universal Health Coverage last September in New York. At this Nairobi summit, we all commit to another statement with several zero goals, especially the zero unmet needs for family planning, information, and services. We must walk our talk, monitor the progress, and discuss further actions. That is why on February 21 in Pattaya, Thailand, together we will make continuous growth to take actions. Attending in Thailand, we also provide you with the opportunity, success of reaching zero unmet on the ground. Date into your calendar now, so that our strong collective voices and movements will once there. Once again, welcome and see you all in Pattaya. Yes, I would like to call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Minister. And now it's my distinct honor to welcome Mary of Denmark.
Good afternoon. I'm very proud to be patron of UNFPA, the UN organization that works to ensure that every pregnancy is wanted, that every childbirth is safe, and that every young person's potential is fulfilled. Planned pregnancy and safe childbirth are two aspects of the concept sexual and reproductive health and rights, which includes the right to decide when to have children, how many to have, with whom, and to have them without risking your life or health in the process. Now, this has been recognized as a human right since 1968, and it was confirmed at the ICPD in Cairo and also at the Beijing Declaration. More recently, the necessity of ensuring universal sexual and reproductive health and rights has been integrated into the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Central to sexual and reproductive health and rights is the dissemination of adequate information, access to contraception that protects against unwanted pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections such as HIV/AIDS, and qualified assistance before, during, and after childbirth. But it also includes the efforts to eliminate harmful traditional practices such as child marriage and female genital mutilation, practices that violate the rights of girls and have very serious consequences or impact on their health. Informed and real reproductive choices can reduce maternal mortality by reducing the number of pregnancies, the number of abortions, and the proportions of births at high risk, so teenage pregnancies. It also offers a host of additional health benefits, social benefits, and economic benefits. It can help reduce infant mortality, slow the spread of HIV/AIDS, promote gender equality, reduce poverty, accelerate socio-economic development, and protect the environment. Despite the increasing availability of contraceptives over the years, hundreds of millions of women today still have no access to them and to the reproductive choices that come with them. Women's low reproductive autonomy is connected to, amongst other things, poor health service infrastructure, lack of information, and discriminatory social institutions that limit women's control over their own bodies. Another barrier is lack of knowledge about contraceptive methods and sources of supply, or incorrect perceptions about the health risks of modern methods. It will take a collective effort to break what is perhaps one of the most widespread taboos of all: comprehensive sexuality education. Young people need to be informed and knowledgeable about puberty, about why their bodies are changing, how children are conceived, and how to protect themselves from unwanted pregnancy and diseases. Research shows that when young people receive correct, accurate, age-relevant sex education and have access to contraception, they are better at protecting themselves and thereby protecting their future. And why are we unable to meet this unmet need that limits a woman's ability to shape her own future? Is it because of lack of investment and resources, bad infrastructure, not enough contraceptions on the market, lack of information? Is it because of weak health systems, culture, traditions? What is it? Unfortunately, I do not have a single answer. Only that this unmet need is at an intersection of many other compounding problems and issues. I hope this session can shed some light on not only the why, but also the how. What are the solutions? What's working? What isn't? What is scalable? How do we ensure rights and contraceptive choices for all? That's the question. That's what we have to go out and do. Our moderators, Beth, excuse me if I say your name's incorrect pronunciation, Schlachter, Executive Director of Family Planning 2020, and Ms. Isabel Perez-Whitkey, Vice Chair of Board of Directors of the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, will help to set the scene for the discussions today. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to our honorable chairs for setting the stage for this session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on ending unmet need. I'm delighted to be here with you today, and before we get started with our session, however, I would like to take a moment to dedicate our time together to a dear friend and colleague who is not with us today. And because I really believe that, or I've come to appreciate, that the family planning community is really a family in many ways, of people who work closely together, who travel to conferences internationally quite often away from our families. We get to know one another quite well. So the loss of any one of us is deeply felt. But the loss of our dear colleague, Jen Schlecht, and her 5-year-old daughter, Abe, is particularly difficult for many of us. Earlier this week, Jen and Abe were killed by their husband and father, and we're feeling that absence very deeply. For those who knew Jen, you know that she was a lifelong advocate for women and girls who worked in crisis. She worked for many of the organizations that are here with us today: the Women's Refugee Council and Gender Health, the International, the IWAG, and for the Women's Refugee Commission. And most recently, we had the great pleasure of working with Jen at FP 2020. So for those who've dedicated their lives to helping women in crisis, this is, I think, particularly a very challenging moment. We heard earlier today, and I'm so pleased that Dr. Khanam and Amina Mohammed dedicated the session against gender-based violence to Jen and Abe. But we heard how pervasive this is, that 1 in 3 women will face this. It's all too pervasive, it seems insidious, it is utterly unacceptable. So would you please join me in a moment of silence for Jen and Abe. Thank you. So I'm going to need your help a little bit with this transition, because what we've prepared for you is a celebration. And it's a celebration of all that this community has achieved together to advance family planning for women and girls around the world. When we had this slot here at 5 o'clock after a really long, exciting day, we thought, well, why not do something where we feel the progress? Because all of us live with the challenges all the time. We know there are solutions. We know many things that can be brought to scale, and we're hearing about those. But what we thought we'd do is feel together what the transition has been since Cairo. What have we really achieved? Because I think sometimes we forget that. We accomplish something, we move on to the next thing because there are so many priorities. So we're going to take you on a living timeline of the accomplishments of the family planning community from Cairo to Nairobi. And it's a bit of a multimedia affair. We're going to use video, we're going to use timelines, and we're going to have the people who've worked on these issues tell us the stories from their countries, from their personal experience, from their communities, from the innovation, from all that's been accomplished, so that I hope when we leave here today, we leave feeling that even though we know we face winds that are just going to keep pushing back on our agenda for women and girls, but we can do more because we've done so much. So please join us on this timeline. And with that, I'd like to have my co-moderator, Isabel, join me, and we will get started. Isabel.
And thank you so much, Beth, for your passion and your work, and the family planning team. You are amazing and honestly role models. I'm really honored to be here among so many people who all believe in the urgency of right-based family planning programs for all people, and especially young people, because for us it means that we can continue to study, we can continue with our life projects and boost our economic prospects. We are excited to work together to build on the legacy of those who came before us to continue to drive toward progress. You can join us today, so you can use the hashtag FBLivingTimeline and share your story so we can further see what are the linkages between them and the things that we're discussing here today. So now let's set up the stage to what family planning means to all of us. Thank you.
The history of family planning is long and complicated. It dates back to the earliest days of humankind. There has never been a time when women and girls didn't want to have control over whether, when, and how many children they would have. Today and every day, we take stock of how far we've come, and for a moment, we celebrate the work we've done. The women and girls who have more autonomy, the giants who lent us their shoulders. There are few issues as complex as family planning. It involves developing contraceptives that women and girls will use with the support of their partners, ensuring that they can obtain the methods they choose, where and when it is convenient for them, and at an affordable price. It is dependent upon the women medical staff, suppliers, governments, donors, community health workers, and men and boys. It is affected by social norms, political will, religious practices, supply chains, crisis and climate situations, and issues of empowerment. But if we are to see beyond the complexity, there is one overriding reason we do this work. One woman. She is born with unlimited potential. She is our daughter, our sister, our mother, our grandmother, our ancestors going back to the beginning of time. Those of us working on family planning do so because of that, because we know that family planning is a public health fundamental, a planet. It reduces infant and maternal mortality, prevents HIV transmission and recourse to unsafe abortion. There have been many seminal moments in the history of family planning, from the ICPD meeting 25 years ago in Cairo to the 1995 Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, the London Family Planning Summits in 2012 and 2017 both catalyzed huge changes in how countries develop and advance their programs. Our community gains strength as our partnership with one another grows, whether we work on supplies or developing youth-friendly clinics or postpartum care, whether we work for a Ministry of Health or at a small advocacy organization. We are finding new and more effective ways to advance our collective vision. We stand with advocates and implementers. We sit at the table with young people and humanitarian workers. We meet with those working on HIV and cervical cancer and maternal, and we stand on the shoulders of giants. Giants exist, though they are not always big in stature. They are the wise women and men, the elders, the young people, the innovators, the ones important. Many of them are here today. They are sitting next to you, or maybe they are gone, but their words and example echo in your own work. We will hear from some of them today. They will remind all of us why we have to keep working so hard. Let's never forget the one woman born into the world in Abuja, or Caracas, or Mumbai, or Chicago, or Warsaw. She wants her turn at designing her own life, and she doesn't care about how the supply chain failed, or that there is only one method of contraception available to her as a consequence. She doesn't want to be told to come back next week when the clinic will possibly be open. She is ready today to move forward. We must not fail her. She could easily be a giant.
So to start our timeline, we're going to start with Cairo. We're going to hear about what Cairo meant to women and girls and how we've taken this forward. And so it is my honor and my real pleasure to introduce to you Geeta Rao Gupta, Dr. Hala Al-Saraf, and Lise Marie Dejan.
Thank you, Beth. This is personal. Growing up in India, my first role model was my mother, Sarah Rao. She was a doctor and a public health specialist. Most importantly, she was a part of the first generation of family providers and trainers. Over the years, I listened to her stories and internalized her message that for women to be economically and socially empowered, they needed to have the freedom and the right to control their own reproductive destinies through access to modern contraceptives and to safe abortion. Many years later, I had the honor and the privilege to meet Dr. Nafis Sadik, the then executive director of UNFPA, who promoted a very similar message and soon became my other role model. Resplendent in brightly colored silk saris, she inspired me and so many of you here who are now in leadership positions in the field of population and family planning. Although she has retired from public life, I'd like to think that she's with us in spirit today. In fact, I'm wearing a sari that belonged to Nafis that I borrowed for the occasion. Dr. Sadiq embodies inspirational, committed, visionary leadership. It's largely because of her determination and her skillful negotiation with a wide range of stakeholders that the ICPD in 1994 became that pivotal moment for women's rights. The program of action, as you all well know, located the realization of women's reproductive rights as a precondition for women's empowerment and made sexual and reproductive health an essential part of development and population policies. Having dedicated my career to advancing women's rights, you can imagine that the Cairo conference was a moment for celebration. It signaled hope for a world in which gender equality and the empowerment of women could indeed become a reality. Since then, although we have made progress, we are far from our goal and are now facing a growing backlash, as Beth mentioned, against women's rights. But today, what I want to say to you is that despite that, I have hope. I have hope because of the grassroots social justice movements all around the world fueled by social media that have drawn attention to injustices against women. I have hope because of the lessons we have learned over the years on how to implement effective rights-based reproductive health policies and programs. I have hope because of the energy and the organizing of those youth leaders who spoke in so many sessions today. I have hope because of the growing evidence that family planning remains a critical pathway towards the realization of women's rights. I have hope, and so must you. Because 25 years after Cairo, we are again at a critical moment in history. A moment that we must together maximize to implement the future that long ago was envisioned by my mother and by Dr. Sadiq and many of us who are still part of this movement today. We believe that a future in which women's rights, dignity, freedom from violence, and empowerment must remain in the center of development and family planning. We want a future in which everyone accepts that the only way to meet women's and young people's unmet need for contraception is to implement a rights-based family planning program. So let's move forward on that path without any hesitation and with full conviction. Thank you.
Greetings from Iraq. Greetings from Iraq. My name is Hala Saraf, and I'm happy to be with you. I'm going to share my personal story. In 1998, 4 births and 16 years of marriage later, I decided to think of going and establishing a career. My husband encouraged me, and that by itself was progressive in the 90s, Iraq. Actually, it is still progressive today. I started my work with the UN as a UN administrative assistant in a UN organization that was conveniently located close to my home. Thereby, I could work and take care of my households at the same time. Taking 2 jobs was not a challenge for me. After all, I've become superior in driving, running between my classes in college and dropping my daughter in the daycare on time. But I was not the only one who had such weird or uncommon thoughts then. To be realistic, that period, the late 90s and beginning 2000, it was a transformational period for women in my country. I myself witnessed that because I soon upscaled the ladder to become the technical assistant of the WHO representative in Iraq. And from there onward, I started my career. I think Cairo has a lot to do, the Cairo Summit has a lot to do with the transformations that most women felt at that period. The drop in fertility rate and the increased use and the maternal mortality rate since then, and the increased use of contraceptives and family planning methods was all contributed to the Cairo Summit then. Ministry of Health Iraq started reporting family planning indicators in the annual reports of the ministry. They even increased the provision or the offering of family services at the primary health centers, which increased from 12% in 2012 up to 65% in 2018, according to MIC6. So these were the influence of the Cairo summit that we feel these transformations had happened. I'm sorry. For us in Iraq, we've been living a continuous crisis. Implementing a family planning was not an easy task to perform. We had lots of challenges. We have the challenges of implementing a strategy that advocates for reaching every area or every territory in the prevalence of ISIS in territories that were newly liberated. Health services, family planning is very difficult in these areas. That was a challenge. The availability of trained professionals, female trained professionals to serve in remote areas is another challenge we have to face. And yet we have to be ready for the next period. For me, when I think of the Cairo summit, I think of the opportunities that we had and we should continue. I think of the engine. The Cairo summit was the engine, and our presence here, we should make sure that we add renewable fuel to that engine to take us to safe shores. Thank you.
Au nom de la délégation haïtienne, plus spécialement des organisations de la société civile dont j'ai aussi l'honneur de représenter, je présente mes salutations et mes remerciements à Son Altesse Royale du Danemark, au gouvernement de la République du Kenya et au personnel de FNUAP, du UNFPA, Fonds des Nations Unies pour la population et le développement. Mon expérience au Caire, à la CIPD, a été d'abord une expérience collective. En effet, en 1990, la Solidarité Femmes Haïtiennes, SOFA, avait intégré le réseau de santé des actives, respectueuses des différences, tant dans les négociations. Au Caire, j'ai rencontré, car à cette époque, Haïti, grossesse précoce, pour les droits reproductifs, la réduction incluant la réduction de la mortalité maternelle et infantile, la dépénalisation de l'avortement et pour de bonnes conditions d'accès à la planification familiale, incluant l'information pour que les femmes fassent des choix éclairés sur leur propre corps. Ces 4 facteurs à eux seuls causent plus de 40% de morts maternelles en Haïti. 25 ans après, en dépit des progrès timides accomplis quant aux engagements pris, il nous reste un long chemin à parcourir. Et c'est pourquoi je joins ma voix à celle de toutes les délégations ici présentes, notamment les jeunes, pour clamer qu'il faut accélérer les promesses pour qu'en 2030, Haïti retrouve sa voie vers le développement. Merci.
As we move forward on the timeline, we have to acknowledge one of the organizations that has advanced in the vision and promise of Cairo, the World Health Organization. Without their rigorous work setting normative standards, many of the pillars of the development and population work that we're doing today would stand on shady ground. So let's welcome now Dr. Ian Askew, Director of Department of Reproductive Health and Research, to speak about this critical work.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to also acknowledge what we just heard from. They really are very inspirational. And if you'll allow me 30 seconds for my own ICPD story. In 1994, I was living and working here in Nairobi as a junior researcher, and I pleaded and pleaded to be allowed to go to the the Cairo conference. But in those days, we didn't have grants for junior researchers. So for me, it's very special to be back here 25 years later, celebrating something I wasn't able to participate in the first time around. And the other memory from that is that in the days leading up to Cairo, that has really changed. But now, 25 years later, our normative have to do that. I really want to bring that out, because to say that we're freely able to make that decision themselves. So for the past 50 years, WHO has worked hard to try to ensure that safe, effective, acceptable, affordable contraceptive methods are widely available so people can and undertake this decision with a full choice of options, and that they can use their preferred method. Being able to access a broad range of options is essential if people are to be able to exercise individual choice and decision-making around reproduction. If you look at the history of contraception, it's shown huge ingenuity in coming up with multiple different ways of preventing unintended pregnancy. And WHO has played quite an important role in that history, both through supporting the development, and introduction and availability of new innovative contraceptive methods, but also in setting the global standards for safety and efficacy around these contraceptive innovations. Because initially, in the early days of contraceptive services, many countries were relying on expert opinion, which ended up being manifested through misguided contraindications, arbitrary eligibility criteria, service provision unnecessarily limited to physicians, providers exercising their own personal biases about who could have which method, and some unnecessary regulation restrictions on some methods. So in 1994, the same year as Cairo, WHO started a process to bring together the scientific evidence on all available contraceptive methods and to convene a group of experts to review and interpret that evidence. And this process led to the medical eligibility criteria, which is the MEC, which for those of you working in the field of contraception, I'm sure are very, very familiar with. This is an ongoing and a living set of guidelines. It's no exaggeration, again, to say that every week we update the database on this. We're constantly keeping the database up to date so that we can make sure that services are provided with the best possible knowledge in place. And now, 25 years later, I'm proud to report that the late 2000 recommendations on the safety and effectiveness of 20... I didn't either till I read that. And we'll have a test afterwards about who can get at least 15 of those, please. So over the years, the MEC has led to the removal of many unnecessary medical barriers that have, unfortunately, over time contributed to the unmet need for modern contraception. But our continuous process is really there in place to try to make sure that we can both make sure that these misunderstandings and misguided interpretations are corrected, and that we're able to urgently respond to emerging issues on a timely manner. Finally, I'd just like to mention that originally the MEC was developed for use by clinicians, but now we're really adapting the MEC and putting it onto new platforms to make it available for community health workers, for women who want to use the methods themselves. We're really trying to make sure that this important information is available for everyone, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that no person should have an unmet need for family planning because of the incorrect evidence or the interpretation and application of the evidence that is undertaken.
So we're making progress. And we know that progress can really only happen within countries, and that requires country leadership and country ownership. It also requires country partnership. And we're so pleased to introduce today Dr. Charles Olaro, who is the Director General for Health Services from the Ministry of Health in Uganda. And Uganda was the host of the first International Conference on Family Planning. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Olaro.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. As I've been introduced, I'm Dr. Laro Charles, the Director, Health Services Minister of Health, Uganda. We are trying to reflect on the 25 years of progress, and Uganda, despite having an increasing population, which was by then 13 million people, now about almost close to 44, and also reducing the maternal mortality ratio from over 600 to 326, and the infant mortality ratio from 43 to 1 per every 1,000 live births. Government has increased commitment, which arose definitely from commitment which were made from the London Summit, and the commitment to increase funding to address the unmet need and to reduce it to 10%, as you heard this morning, His Excellency announced, and also increase the contraceptive prevalence to 50%. The country developed a costed implementation plan running from 2016 to 2020. And this also, we rolled it out to the districts, also developed district costed plans, and these were meant definitely to create ownership and also for the district to appropriate money for family planning in terms of increasing domestic financing for family planning. The policy framework has been improved on issues of gender-based violence, school health, as you again heard. We've created a platform, as you create a platform on reproductive maternal neonatal child, on which we engage religious leaders, cultural leaders, MPs, and youth. And this definitely is meant to really to break the barriers, because you know there are quite a number of barriers, both cultural barriers and religious barriers, and really we already moved a number of them to be able to be supportive. We also, every 2 years, we host the National Family Planning Conference, following the international one, to bring also the different stakeholders so that they can be able to be part of this. All these, ladies and gentlemen, are definitely geared to contributing the development, the Sustainable Development Goals, which we think definitely will drive us to the universal health coverage, to achieving universal coverage for the population of Uganda. Thank you very much for listening.
so happy you're So another country that's working in a very complex environment is Nigeria. The government of Nigeria has a group since 2012 when they made their commitment, and they've been an indispensable partner since that day. Their commitment focuses on dispelling the myths and misconceptions around family planning, expanding the provision of family planning services and supplies to the last mile, and cultivating an environment in which women and girls can make informed choices about their health and their rights. We're honored to welcome His Excellency the Minister Osaji Enyere, the Minister of Health for Nigeria. Please join me on the stage.
Good evening, everybody. I bring you greetings from Nigeria, specifically from Abuja. As a partner in the FP 2020 initiative, is fully committed to providing access to rights-based family planning and contraceptive services to all women of reproductive age and those who make requests for such service. We believe that health is a right and a matter of equity, and that investment in family planning pays off in human and social benefits, while its impact on the productivity and well-being of women and girls is indisputable and is measurable in economic terms. Family planning is therefore as much a health and rights issue as it is an economic issue, and Nigeria subscribes to the concept that managing the economy can go side by side with managing population. Studies have also shown us that the great potential of family planning to contribute a reduction of up to 30 and 50% respectively to maternal and child mortality ratios, and therefore Nigeria has begun to revamp its family planning program at national, state, local service delivery points, which required strengthening the systems and processes for enhancing delivery of quality family planning services. This will increase access and uptake by Nigerians of reproductive age. The ongoing drive for universal health coverage in Nigeria will also expand the network of primary healthcare centers and provide more platforms to advance family planning, especially to rural underserved areas, and make the range of family planning information, commodities, and services more accessible to poor, underserved populations in rural and poor suburban high-density dwellings. The proportion of youth beneficiaries here is also going to be very high. Family planning is, of course, offered free at all public sector service points, signified in Nigeria with the large green dot. It is also available in collaboration with private health facilities to improve availability and affordability to increase access. The Federal Ministry of Health in Nigeria will continue to focus on domestic resource mobilization for investment in family planning, sexual and reproductive health, and ensure procurement and supply of contraceptive commodities that are sustained with a proper inventory. Family planning method mix will diversify with the introduction and scale-up of DMPA, SC, and other approved contraceptions, such as various strategies to raise demand and build capacity for family planning service providers will remain key to our family planning scale-up effort. In this regard, we work with traditional rulers, community leaders, and gatekeepers to ensure that the buy-in for family planning is well known. And it's very clear that families that are particularly large are also volunteering to help in supporting government strategy to advise others to limit their family size. Policy barriers and regulatory bottlenecks hindering private sector participation will be addressed in line with best practices to create an enabling environment for program implementation by the private sector. Government has initiated the following interventions to promote uptake and for long-term sustainability. First is the National Health Insurance Scheme, which presently covers only the formal workforce and is going to be expanded to include the private sector in the economy. Second is the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, which was initiated last year and adds an additional $180 million over and above the health budget. It's a useful addition to the pool of funds available for primary healthcare services under which family planning is operated. Efficient implementation of the above interventions target populations with the greatest financial barriers to family planning service and facilitates uptake on a sustainable basis beyond 2020. With regard to sexuality education, Nigeria fully subscribes to age-appropriate and culture-sensitive content offered by well-trained personnel. We believe families should be well advised to have only the number of children they can care for and to make good use of the options of family planning that are available, whereby husband and wife are counseled together as a unit so that the decisions they take are collective and clashes at home are restricted. Nigeria subscribes to responsible parenthood and to meeting unmet family planning needs. Thank you very much.
We can't speak about progress, toward achieving universal access without including the service provider. In 30 national has come to signify high quality care, with a focus of serving those who are hardest to reach. Let's welcome Simon Cook, President and CEO of Mary Stopes International.
Thank you. So I do have the answer to how to eliminate unmet need by 2030 because my daughter told me. She's 17 years old and she said, put women in power. And I'm not going to argue with a 17-year-old. So in preparation for this visit, the same daughter, 17 years old, asked me what I was doing because I was reading the papers at the kitchen table, and I explained what the 25 of CIPD 25 meant, and she said, why did it take so long? And she said it wouldn't have taken so long if men got pregnant. So this is a very wise child. So for the last 43 years, MSI has championed the rights of women to choose when and how many children to have. Since ICPD elevated the issue in 1994, MSI has served 130 million clients in 38 countries, provided over 16 million implants, 28 million injectables, 18 million IUDs, and 8 million tubal ligations. At the same time, we have averted 54 million unsafe abortions, tremendous numbers. MSI believes in advocacy by doing, which means filling the gaps in service provision, providing contraception where it's needed, and treating a woman seeking abortion without judgment and without stigma. We also focus fundamentally on doing it in a quality-assured environment with provider training and safeguarding. Whereas in 1994, MSI saw 1.5 million clients a year, in 2018, last year, we saw 10 million. 80% of these clients were either adopters, people using contraception for the first time, adolescents, or people living in extreme poverty. Many of you are citizens or, thank you. Many of you are citizens or representatives of countries that have signed and ratified the Maputo Protocol, Article 14 of which emphasizes a woman's right to reproductive health and access to medical safe abortion and sexual education. So it's not really about just delivering something new, it's delivering actually what many of you have already committed to. And there are many global issues which we think are very difficult to resolve, and all of us struggle with how we're going to resolve them. But this is one issue which we think is relatively easy to fix. We know what it takes. This is not one of those issues that cannot be solved in the next 10 years. UHC is a noble objective, but unless it includes safe and regulated healthcare covering all women's and girls' needs, our work at MSI will not be done. And we know the number of unsafe abortions which happen every year in this country and many other countries in which we work, which really is a scandal and really needs to be solved. Therefore, with the greatest respect, I hope that my successor is not standing here in 25 years saying there is more work to be done, because it really can be done now. Finally, I would say, I didn't always feel this way. I've been taught by my daughters. I have two daughters, 19 and 17. And when the first daughter, Sophia, was born 19 years ago, it changed everything about my perspective about what was important, which I'm sure all of you have had children realize. And I'm learning, as they develop and become teenagers and young women, I'm learning much more about what counts. So to go back to the first point, I genuinely believe that the problem will get resolved, and it will get resolved by putting women in positions of power so that we can eliminate some of these completely unnecessary boundaries. Thank you.
Partnerships. They are a key accelerator for family planning. and much of our progress has been advanced through some of the key partnerships we've seen here on our living timeline, and through many of the people here in this room. So I'm so pleased to announce today that with the FB 2020 annual report this year, we're announcing that 53 million additional women and girls were able to use modern contraception since 2012. That's the work of everyone in this room. And it will be through partnerships that will continue to make progress. So it's my pleasure to invite three friends to the stage. Julia Bunting, the President of the Population Council, Sadia Rahman, a family planning youth leader and FP 2020 focal point in Bangladesh, and Dr. Fatim Haidara, the Executive Director of the Ouagadougou Partnership Cooperation Unit. Friends, please join me on stage.
Is it working? Yes. Thank you, Beth, and good evening, everyone. And as you saw, our part of the timeline starts in the summer of 2012, when the London Summit on Family Planning was held. But the seed for that summit started more than 2 decades before, when as a 16-year-old girl, I was doing an exchange program with a school in the rural northeast of Tanzania. And a young man about the same age as me came up to me and he asked a very simple question. He said, "My mother has 7 children, she doesn't want any more, and she doesn't know how to stop." I had no idea how to respond to that question. As a 16-year-old, I had been fortunate that just a couple of months before, I'd been taken to a Family Planning Association clinic, and I'd been counseled on my reproductive choices, and I'd left with pills and condoms given to me for free so that I could prevent an unintended pregnancy. So the injustice of knowing that there was a woman several thousand miles away from where I grew up, who not only didn't have access, but didn't have the information and knowledge that she needed to make those kinds of decisions for herself. So fast forward 21 years, and I've been working at the UK Department for International Development for more than 10 years. And a call went out in July 2011 saying the UK government wanted to host an important event that had the power to transform development progress. And I put forward a concept note to do something on family planning, which was initially rejected because they thought it was easy to do something on nutrition. But I called some colleagues in USAID, in UNFPA, and in the Gates Foundation and said we might have a chance. If not this year, then maybe next year. 6 months further on, our colleagues in nutrition couldn't figure out what they would actually do. So I said, I have a fully baked proposal. And they said, "Can you do this in 6 months?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I called my colleagues at the Gates Foundation and USAID, and many of them are in the room, and UNFPA, and said, "It's now. We have 6 months to pull off a summit." And we set a bold and ambitious plan to enable additional 120 million women around the world to be able to decide freely and for themselves whether, when, and how many children to have. And as Beth just said, 7 years later, 53 million additional women now have that right, that choice, and that opportunity. But it was achieved through the power of partnership, the partnership of many, many people in this room. More than 30 governments from lower middle income countries made commitments at the London Summit. Donor agencies pledged more than $2.6 billion. Representatives from the private sector, civil society, and academia made their own commitments. And through the power of partnership, through the power of perseverance, and through the passion of people around this room, millions and millions of lives have been transformed. We didn't manage to do it for that woman that I never actually met in Tanzania now 29 years ago, but hopefully for her daughter and probably for her granddaughter, that opportunity is now a reality.
And we are hopeful. So meaningful youth engagement is an inclusive, intentional, and mutually respectful partnership between youth and adult, whereby power is shared. I believe FP 2020 has come a long way in terms of meaningful youth engagement, as including youth focal points in this global partnership. Also, countries having youth-focused commitments are accelerating the process as well. If I have to answer the question that how FP 2020 Global Partnership can move forward in a way that is most meaningful to young people, I would say, as we call for universal access to sexual reproductive health and rights, information and services, including access to full range of contraceptive methods, safe abortion services, quality postpartum care, including empathetic and trained health service providers, and comprehensive sexuality education provided across different settings. Nothing else or nothing less will do. So it should be collective superpowers of this global partnership to make sure every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every woman and girls are treated with dignity. When I became the youth focal point in Bangladesh, I was warmly welcomed by my government, my CSO focal point, and other donor focal points as well. Until date, I'm continuously connected with them and exploring opportunities to build better access to family planning in Bangladesh. And this has been an excellent opportunity for us to discuss fresh ideas that how we can improve access to family planning in Bangladesh for young people. And this gave me an opportunity as well to introduce themselves to wider networks in Bangladesh, youth networks in Bangladesh, so they can connect their programs that how to connect with young people on the ground. And we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go as well. And if today we are committing a better world to us, we young people are also committing a better world for our next generation as well. We are here to join hands with all who will work with us to secure our reproductive life and rights for a better future. Our global partnership needs to help build a resilient world for everyone. This partnership itself needs to be built on a model resilience to be ready, responsive, and to be able to revitalize after setbacks. Our global partnership needs to be able to diverse, I would say more diverse, and address vulnerabilities, ensure social petitions, be integrated and self-regulated, and promote and encourage local and national leadership. We, young people, will stand with you as equal partner in this global partnership. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, as we all agreed, now we know the partnership is one of the accelerators of family planning. And I'm going to talk about the Wagadugu partnership, as you saw, we created in 2011. And what is the Wagadugu partnership? It is a coalition of the willing, focused in improving lives of women in families in 9 countries in West Africa. Okay, what happened? Our country leaders, our implementing partners, and our donors have come together recognizing that we can make better and faster progress by joining forces to share experiences in insight, to launch a region-wide program, and to advocate for better policies and funding as a single community. When we started 7 years ago, about 3 million women were using modern contraceptive in the region. Today, over 6 million women do. And the benefit to families and to youth in particular, to economies and society have been enormous. I think you can applaud for that. Our partnership continued to build momentum, and we were trying to both offer our experience as a model for other regions in the world, and to learn from other partners working across Africa, South Africa, Asia, and the rest of the world. We are all in this together or as we say in our offices in Dakar, on est ensemble. Thank you very much.
So this brings us to today. We've gone from Cairo to Nairobi. We've looked at many of the accomplishments, many of the accelerators, many of the partnerships. We know that going forward, we have so much more to achieve. We have many goals. We still need to achieve so much more under FP 2020. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know that we need to get to universal access for sexual and reproductive health and rights, including with family planning.
Forget about it. Yeah, so that's incredibly true. And family planning is only one aspect of a person's health care. If we are truly to live up to the promise of Cairo, we must accept that integrating family planning into other critical issues is essential. The way forward is together, and our next speakers will share some insights about that. So let's welcome David Johnson, CEO of Margaret Pike Trust.
Thank you. We know ICPD was historic, but we don't focus enough on a part of the programme of action which can help us broaden our allies, the many references to sustainable development. We want to mainstream SRHR in the work of other sectors, so we must excite people outside health and gender on the impact of our work. The Thriving Together campaign highlights the critical importance of family planning not only to women's health, but also to planetary health. 160 organisations have endorsed the Thriving Together statement. Half are SRHR organisations and half are environmental organisations. On this panel, FP 2020, UNFPA, MSI, Population Council have all endorsed, but perhaps more importantly, 50 members of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, they've endorsed too. The Thriving Together statement refers to ICPD. So for the very first time, all of those organisations have affirmed the fundamental right to choose if and when to have children. We really must continue to talk to people outside this room. The global population has grown by 2 billion since Cairo, and we know that removing barriers to family planning reduces unintended pregnancies. Because of Thriving Together, the environmental sector is starting to see that removing barriers to family planning reduces pressures on ecosystems as well. Geographically, nature organisations work where last-mile rural communities live. We should really want these partners. UN climate scientists have recognised family planning as a climate response. Let's benefit from the current focus on climate change and build new partnerships. The Thriving Together statement includes this text. By harming ecosystems, we undermine food security and human health, and we threaten habitats and species. Ensuring family planning is available to all who seek it is among the positive actions we must take to lessen these pressures. The health of our planet has never been more uncertain, and the health of people and ecosystems are connected. The SDGs call for integrated solutions. By working together, we can help human communities and their ecosystems thrive. Next year, France hosts the IUCN World Conservation Congress, and I promise you we will change global conservation policy to make reference to family planning. To meet all of our goals, we need new allies, and that's why the Margaret Pike Trust has been coordinating the Thriving Together movement. You can read the full statement online, along with the background paper at www.thrivingtogether.global. And if I timed my tweets by Kenyan time, not UK time, you could have seen the links as well. Hashtag Thriving Together. Thank you.
Now let's welcome to the stage Anna Targonskaya, Chief Science Officer of Flow.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I would like to thank UNFPA for inviting us to celebrate such an important milestone as the 25th anniversary of ICPD. Flow is the world's leading health application powered by artificial intelligence and used by more than 100 million women globally. Flow has initially started as an easy-to-use period tracker and has evolved into a comprehensive women's health coach that aims to significantly improve health and well-being of women. At Flow, we firmly believe in the importance of raising awareness and spreading dialogue around women's health and to connect science, clinical practice, and everyday life. With more than 100 million users all over the world, we are proud to have the possibility to bring an easy access to reproductive health information to them, including on family planning and contraceptive methods, no matter who they are and where they live. So how does Flow contribute to the goal of ensuring that women and girls around the world have an access to family planning? Flow provides personalized and evidence-based health insights on key women's health topics based on the logged symptoms and reproductive goals. Flow has developed a series of chatbots aimed to raise women's awareness on the most common reproductive topics. The chatbots or health assistants proactively interact with users in a friendly manner and provide them with personalized educational content developed together with medical experts. We are proud of our community section, which is a unique and safe space for anonymous discussions, where women can openly talk and support each other. This year, we have also rolled out our first courses, a digital learning hub with multimedia content on such topics as sleep, acquiring healthy habits, and reducing stress, and many more. We're honored about our partnership with the NFPA and the powerful, trusted, and interactive content we created together on contraception, breast and cervical health, and educational content for teens. We released more than 56 pieces of content, and this year they were read by more than 3.5 million women and girls globally. In collaboration with UNFPA, this year we have also conducted a research on contraception among 80,000 women and used this opportunity to provide them with information about their preferred method of contraception. We have a lot more plans moving forward, and we firmly believe in the importance of raising awareness and spreading dialogue around women's health that to a large extent defines the future we're going to live in. Thank you.
So there's progress, there's hope, there are new partnerships, there are innovations, there's new technology. So much is happening that can take us forward and will. And I'm particularly excited that the environmental community and the family planning community are working together. There are more people that believe in saving the planet than are sticking their head in the sand and hiding from that reality. So let's bring these communities together. Let's work together across health sectors. We also know that data and evidence are going to pull us forward as well and play an important role. And this last year, many of you are aware that Options and HIV Outcomes Study, the ECHO trial, assessed the impact of 3 different contraceptive options on women's HIV risk. The study found no substantial differences in HIV risk for women using the 3 methods, but it also found much higher rates among young women in particular of HIV. So the very same women who are vulnerable to unintended pregnancy are also very vulnerable to HIV. Our 2 sectors have to work together. HIV, preventing HIV, preventing unintended pregnancy, preventing cervical cancer. This all happens in the same way for the same woman and girl. So it's my honor now to introduce to you Winnie Byanyima, the Executive Director of UNAIDS, and Chilufya Hampango, an AVAC alum and an HIV advocate. Please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you. Excellencies, delegates, activists, I'm thrilled to be here as the new Executive Director of UNAIDS. Delighted. We have the ICPD Plan of Action, we have the Beijing Platform for Action, we have the Political Declaration on Ending AIDS. All these affirm human rights of women and girls, their sexual and reproductive lives freely, without fear or shame, without discrimination, without stigma, without violence. Yet, still today, millions of women are not able to realize their right to contraception, nor their right to comprehensive HIV prevention and treatment services. And these are core to their empowerment across all aspects of their lives, as we all know. The barriers blocking young women from family planning and HIV services are hurting them, are destroying their lives. Maternal mortality. This is the leading killer for 15 to 19-year-old girls worldwide. And HIV is the leading cause of death for women aged 15 to 49. The unmet need for HIV prevention and treatment and family planning services is a huge injustice to women and girls. People living and at risk of HIV, sex workers, and anyone with a non-conforming sexual identity and expression pays a cruel price of stigma and criminalization every day. 95% of countries have one, 95%, so only 5%. 95% of countries have one or more laws that discriminate against women. What a world in which we are in. 66 countries criminalize same-sex relations, including my own country, Uganda. And only 12 of 101 countries report no punitive or criminal measures against sex work. 35% of women have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. We hear this stat all the time. These are huge injustices. Yet, we've come such a long way in advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights and ending AIDS. And indeed, it's right to celebrate. 2002, the world had less than 40,000 people on treatment for HIV. Less than 40,000 in 2002. Today, we have 23.3 million people on treatment living healthy lives. That's progress. But as leaders, we must own up where we are failing. The reduction in new infections since 2010 is only 16%. The aim, the target is 75%. We're not going to get there. 60% of new infections are in young people, our young people. In our own region here, Eastern and Southern Africa, this is 3 out of 4 new infections is a young person. That's really, we've let them down. These young people living with HIV too often experience health services that don't work for them, that don't take into account their life situations, their needs. Young women are dying at unacceptably higher rates of HIV infection. So, let's ask ourselves also, why, with the evidence from ECHO, in 2019, we are still failing to integrate HIV and family, sexual and reproductive health services. Why? Surely this person who needs HIV treatment is also likely to need reproductive health services. Why are we failing to pull it together? So I'm in my second week at UNAIDS, and I'm posing 2 priorities for action. They may be ill-informed, just forgive me. First, let's fight to repeal all legislation that discriminates on the basis of gender and that criminalizes sexuality. Yes, let's fight for that. I'm saying this with something in my heart because only last night I saw on the news, own country in the capital, where mainly gay people were rounded up, and it doesn't seem to be a usual police on gay people. There's work to do. We've got to also challenge the harmful social norms that are barriers to women and girls and to key populations to their access to services. So let's challenge attitudes. And we know best how to do it. We've done it in the women's movement. We can do it on the issue of HIV. My second proposal, let's fight to introduce comprehensive sexuality education for all adolescents and young people. Yes. You know, I told some people that my school teacher, when I was 11, my mother was a school teacher, did my mom a favor by asking me to leave the class on sexual education. She thought she was doing me and my mother a favor. Said, this is not good for her. These things are not good. So let's change that. Let's link that sexuality education to sexual and reproductive health services and HIV services that are integrated to mental health services. If we put all this together, we will have our highest impact. Those are my two additions. And lastly, let's not tolerate in providing these services judgmental attitudes from providers. It's unacceptable. We must deliver these services as duty bearers and those who seek those services as rights holders, a human rights-based approach. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. So many years have passed in the epidemic. HIV prevention and SRH and family planning still stands apart when it comes to funding. Meanwhile, all these programs are designed to meet the needs of me as a young woman and many other young women out there. How then do we make sure that these young women and these programs that we design address the need realistically for them to live a healthy and dignified life? At the beginning of this session, Beth had given an introduction of the ECHO findings. What does the ECHO findings tell us at this point? It gives us an opportunity to bring about integration. Why do I say so? It is evident that when many young girls and women go to a facility to seek contraceptive use services or family planning, they are more concerned about preventing pregnancy. This puts them at a higher risk of acquiring HIV and other STIs. How then do we make sure that we have an effective response with regards to integration? I feel it is time to deliver multi-layered responses. This might come in form of multi-technology options, broad range products that will give them an opportunity to choose using informed choice and have control over their reproductive health rights. Some may wonder, why should this be a big deal? We always want to run business as usual. The ECHO results gives us an opportunity to do business unusual. This requires an effective response to integration. This would mean allocating funds for both commodities and delivery strategies, inclusive of social marketing, demand creation strategies, and also having in mind women are not the other person in the audience might not have my same preferences. It is time that we segment women in their diversity and meet their needs appropriately. And also, it is very important that we develop targeted messages and materials to reach each segment with what they need and want. This is very true because Initially, when HIV was declared as an emergency, there was that agency to bring about messages, development of materials, but that has died down over time. Why? Because we're doing business as usual, and we feel this can continue, but this should not continue. As long as HIV prevention programs and products are designed with a focus on a virus, and family planning services are designed with a focus on HIV, on pregnancy in meetings. To act is now. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for inspiring us to action. I think for many of us, the ECHO trial was a clarion call, and it gave us another opportunity at integration. And I feel like we have the right people now to make sure that we don't fail this time to create integrated services. Thank you. So now let's turn our attention to financing and to the partnerships that we have with donors who continue to believe in the SRHR and family planning agenda and to put their money behind it. Please join me in welcoming Baroness Sugg, who is the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the UK Department for International Development, DFID.
Thank you, Beth. As one of the core conveners of the partnership, FP 2020 has been and will continue to be really important for the UK. And I recognise that so many people speaking at this event and in the audience today have played a vital part in this journey before me, truly standing on the shoulders of giants. As we come to the end of this session, I'd also like to take the opportunity on behalf of the UK to honour the memory of Jennifer Schlett. Her incredible work on this agenda will live on in the memory of many of you in the room and in the lives of the many women and girls that she helped. The UK remains committed to expanding access to rights-based family planning, as committed as we were in 2012 when we proudly hosted the Family Planning Summit, and in 2017 when we co-hosted the follow-up summit. But we're now on to the future of the timeline, so I should speak to that. For the UK, family planning is a core component of comprehensive sexual and reproductive health and rights. And to achieve what we all want from the future, let's be honest, we need to talk about funding. And the UK has pledged £225 million per year up to 2022, and we're delivering on that promise. We're a major donor across the whole spectrum of SRHR, from our flagship programme WISH to our ongoing support as the biggest donor to UNFPA. You don't have to clap every time, but thank you. And to achieve what we want from the future, we also need supplies. And I was really delighted to confirm that £425 million of UK funding will go to a reformed UNFPA supplies, and that's going to provide life-saving contraception to over 40 of the world's poorest countries. And to achieve our goals, we do need to see other donors step up and join the UK in the funding to this programme. And to achieve what we want from the future, we need to harness the potential for collaboration and for partnerships. I was really pleased to announce that the UK are joining the Ouagadougou partnership to ensure that we're there to help support efforts to accelerate progress on access to family planning across Francophone Africa. And we heard from Julia earlier about all that we've achieved through partnership, and we need more partnerships and more collaboration for the future. And to achieve what we want for the future, we looked at FP 2020 to bring us together and to guide us. And that's why we're at the UK continuing to fund the FP 2020 Secretariat and working closely with members of the partnership to develop a shared vision for the future. And we're really excited about what that vision presents. So collectively, we have the potential to reduce unmet need, to empower women and adolescent girls to really advance gender equality, to ensure that the most marginalised are reached, and that we are prepared to face some of the biggest challenges we're going to face, such as climate change and crises. We really have achieved so much already together, and that's been hammered home by the great event we've had today. But there are many challenges ahead, and the UK stands with you as we focus on the decade to come. Thank you.
We are
grateful to the UNFPA for bringing us all together to celebrate the progress made over the past 25 years and to look to the future with hope and expectation of a better world for the next generation. Please help me welcome Derece Wardofa, Deputy Executive Director of the UNFPA, so he can share the exciting next phase of family planning in the UNFPA.
Thank you, Isabel. Your Excellencies, honorable guests, friends, and young people in the room. For millions of women and girls around the world, the ability to access and use contraception is not abstract. It is a matter of life and death. I want to recognize and thank Barnos SAG and their unwavering commitment to the UNFPA supplies. Your leadership during these challenging times is a powerful example of how we can all redirect ourselves to the spirit of Cairo Conference in 1994. Join me, Rancho. Indeed, we are grateful to all partners who have committed to UNFPA supplies since its launch 11 years ago. Your support means that now supply chains are stronger. More countries are spending domestic resources on contraceptions. And most importantly, more women and girls have access to voluntary family planning services, including those in fragile and conflict settings. The world cannot achieve universal health coverage without prioritizing universal access to sexual reproductive health and rights. UNFPA Supplies is not only the largest provider of donated contraceptives in the world, but it's also a key provider of technical assistance to many countries. Supplies program is the engine of the drives UNFPA key agenda. Progress of all the three transformative results by 2030. You heard it many, many times before now and this morning. That is to end unmet need of family planning and ending preventable maternal deaths and ending gender-based violence, including child marriage and female genital mutilation. Continuing this vital work allows to build on our successes and lessons learned over years. Therefore, I'm delighted to announce that UNFPA Supplies program is being extended to 2030. Two cross-cutting themes will anchor the program work for the next decade. One, greater integration of family planning in humanitarian situations. Two, meeting young people's need for contraceptions. By expanding UNFPA supplies through 2030, we aim to avert 141 million unintended pregnancies and 42 million unsafe abortions. And we will prevent deaths of an estimated 2.4 million mothers and children. With the strategic evaluation of the supplies program, we are ready to seize the opportunities that lie ahead to ensure all women and girls have the means to prevent or delay pregnancy, and that countries are solid on the path towards achieving universal health coverage. We cannot afford to lose any ground, as we have seen across in the living time today. You, all of you in this room and beyond, have been the strength of the family planning movement. Your steadfast commitment to tackling tough issues, defending the rights of women and girls, and the challenging one another to build a more sustainable and prosperous future for all is the reason why I am standing before you today and pledge that UNFPA will work tirelessly and fearlessly to ensure we end the unmet need of family planning by 2030. Thank you so much.
Thank Thank you, Dereje. That's indeed very exciting news. So, FP 2020, the end date is in the name, and it's around the corner. I'm very pleased that we will be working through 2020 in terms of working toward our original goal, and I'm also quite honored that both the UK, DFID, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are funding our current work into 2022, so that as we transition to the next phase of partnership, we have stability within this partnership. We're building on the success of what we've had and what we've learned in order to take ourselves forward, and many of you have been a part of the global consultation that we've been working on this year that has defined our vision for moving forward. And that vision is working together for a future where all women and adolescent girls everywhere have the freedom and the ability to make their own in modern contraception if to have children, to lead healthy lives, and to participate as equals in society and development. So, as I said, this has been an ongoing process, and where we are now is that we've shared this framework with all of our country partners. And we've asked the FP country teams to meet with stakeholders and discuss what about this vision works for them. Would they like to see any transition in that? Would they like to see something different? And how do they want us to implement this through partnership? We've had a lot of really great feedback from these country consultations, and they will continue to come in through December. And then we'll work together with FP 2020's core conveners, who you have heard are the UK government, the Gates Foundation, USAID, and UNFPA. And we'll decide if there needs to be a different approach to implementing all of this. And we look forward to launching that finally when we all join together in Thailand in early 2021 for the next ICFP. But in between, next year, we're going to hold focal point workshops in every one of the FP 2020 regions working in across Africa with Haiti and in Asia. And we're going to get the process started of generating new commitments. What does the country want to achieve? And what's it going to take through country partnership to achieve that? And then we're going to ask them to set their own commitments through consultation in the countries, so that when we come to Thailand, there's already been an intensive process that's taken place at home with everybody in the country to build a partnership for success to the future, so that those commitments that come are already announced, they're already grounded. It's what are we going to do to move it forward? And when we leave Thailand together in 2021, we'll have a collective vision of action that's already taking place. And we have an accountability framework that's built in to the process of co-creation. So we've learned a lot about how commitments can be galvanizing and move us forward. And the next step is to ensure that they are owned by everybody in the partner country. So thank you so much for coming along on this timeline with us. We started with some of the women who have been working on this agenda since Cairo. And we want to leave you with the next generation who are going to share with you their call to action and what they want for family planning going forward. So I invite Sadia and Chilufia and Isabel to give us their call to action and close this incredible session. Thank you all.
As I march in full support of stronger linkages between HIV and family planning, I would like to make this call to action. With all this evidence-based data from the ECHO trial result, I would ask all funders, normative agencies present, and both those that are not present, CSOs, implementers, and governments, as you set post-2020 goals and strategies, endeavor to set global integration targets. Support country action plans with resources on integration with clear, defined roles and plans for action to move this work forward with community engagement, because there's nice. Thank you.
As I march for youth rights, so let's be real, it's been 25 years of ICPD, and we haven't seen any significant change on adolescent and youth's sexual and reproductive health and rights. Have you asked yourself what could be the possible reason for this? Maybe one of the main reasons for this that we young people haven't been included as an equal partner with you guys. We are tired working alone. I'm sure you guys are tired working alone as well. And it's not like you are succeeding without us anyway. So we are here standing to support you and be the equal partner in your development works. And I really look forward to this global partnership to work together.
And finally, it's me again. We're ending the session, and I really want to thank you all for being here and for staying so late. I know it's late. We know that. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to see all these committed partners doing such a meaningful and crucial work to address the needs of adolescents and youth, the most excluded ones, and especially adolescents. And today I march for them. So I want to make these two final calls to action. One to the young people in the room. I don't know if there's, yay! To the fellow young people here and outside as well. Okay, there. Let's continue to do what we're doing, to articulate our needs and to share them here in these spaces and other spaces to construct the allies that we need to address these needs properly and co-responsively. In the same line that my colleague said, let's just build accountability mechanisms, let's lean on them, and let's push for equal partnerships. And finally, to our partners, everyone here and allies, we need to work on cross-sectoral engagement. This is so needed. So we can address all those needs that we were discussing. This conference is really big. It has people from all around the world, from the community of the sexual and reproductive health and rights, but we need more people. We need more. Because sexual and reproductive lives are not siloed. We cannot just leave our gender identities and our genitals at home. We have them everywhere. So we need people from other sectors. We need people coming from the economic sector, the labor sector, in these conversations, in the discussions on contraception and family planning. This will be the only way so we can address all the needs that we were talking about, and that we can continue to make progress on the ICPD program of action and the Sustainable Development Agenda. So thank you so much for joining us. We have concluded our lovely session. And have a lovely evening. Enjoy.